My name is Astrid Hayes, 29 years old, a financial risk analyst who happened to be the exclusive financier of this entire charade. The annual Capital Gala shimmered with fraudulent success around me. I was standing alone, unnoticed, observing the crowd of high-net-worth individuals my family was desperately trying to impress. Every glass of champagne, every imported orchid, every dollar spent was silently drawn from my meticulously managed bank accounts. I saw my mother move toward the makeshift stage, seizing the microphone with the dramatic flair of a woman born for the spotlight, even if the light was powered by my savings. Her voice, sharp and entitled, cut through the sophisticated chatter. "Now, everyone," she announced, her eyes sweeping the room until they landed on me, fixing me with a look of proprietary contempt. "We must thank the person who ensures these events are possible, the true bedrock of our family's ambition." A smug, cruel smile stretched across her face. "A huge thank you to our dear, indispensable, and slightly dull Astrid for her dedicated work. Thank you to our walking ATM." The ripple of laughter led by my father was the soundtrack of my life, a mocking dismissal that always diminished my achievements and amplified my role as a passive resource. But tonight I didn't feel hurt. I felt a chilling clarity. The moment was past the point of tears or explanation. They had reduced me to an object, and I would respond as a transaction. My voice was low, cutting through the residual laughter like ice. "If I am merely a walking ATM," I stated, looking directly into my mother's startled eyes, "then the ATM will stop working starting tomorrow." I didn't wait for the inevitable scene. I pulled out my phone as I walked away, not toward my car, but toward the nearest quiet corner. Before the mansion door even closed behind me, I was executing the ultimate severance. The money supply, the very oxygen of their opulent lie, was cut. If your family treated you like a source of funding, not a family member, would you dare to cut them off financially immediately? Before we continue my story, let me know what time and city you are watching from so I can know how far my story has traveled. Leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of financial justice. The aftermath of that decisive action was a profound and unsettling silence. I returned to my routine as a financial risk analyst, finding the cold, rational world of corporate finance infinitely less risky than the volatile emotions of my family. I spent the weekend performing one final chilling audit of my accounts. The final tally was grim. I had been the sole funder for 21 months, transferring roughly $86,000. This figure was not for genuine need, but for the maintenance of their extravagant social facade. My mother's Hayes Elite Events business expenses, my brother's second luxury car lease, and endless emergency requests for liquidity. I thought of what that money represented: my down payment fund, the seed capital for the consulting firm I dreamed of starting. This self-inflicted damage was the real cost of my loyalty. The financial loss was secondary to the betrayal. The memory of my late grandfather Walter surfaced, a man whose quiet strength was the only counterweight to my parents' avarice. He had been a successful self-made engineer who saw through their entitlement. When I was younger and my mother, Rhonda Hayes, openly favored my brother Keaton, grandfather Walter took me under his wing. He taught me about investing, about compound interest, and, most importantly, about autonomy. He established a small trust fund for me, not for spending, but as a safeguard. "Always have a cushion, Astrid," he'd told me. "So no one can ever buy your silence or your obedience." My decision to cut them off was a tribute to him, a promise finally kept. The initial 48 hours after I severed the financial ties were marked by an eerie total silence from the family mansion. There were no frantic texts, no calls from my father, Robert Hayes, no emails demanding an explanation. They didn't miss me. They missed the immediate, frictionless flow of money. Their silence confirmed that my role was purely transactional, a broken machine, not a lost daughter. I felt strangely liberated, the familiar knot of obligation having finally unraveled. Then on the third day, the customer service call came. It was Rhonda. I put her on speakerphone, recognizing the tone of high indignation, the annoyance of a consumer whose expensive product has failed. Astrid. She clipped her voice tight with suppressed rage, skipping any form of greeting. The bank has contacted Robert about the automatic transfer failing. Do you understand the level of stress and inconvenience these disruptions cause? The deposit for the event hall is now late, and Keaton has his biggest pitch meeting next week. I need you to fix this glitch immediately. This is truly embarrassing, and we sacrificed so much to give you the life you have only to worry about this nonsense now. She didn't wait for a response, hanging up with a definitive click. Her words solidified my decision. I was not her child. I was a defective piece of technology that needed recalibration. The problem wasn't the relationship. The problem was the glitch in the money supply. My passive silence had officially transitioned into an active, defiant wall, making it clear that their ATM was not merely broken, it was permanently decommissioned. Day 4 marked the transition from passive complaint to aggressive, full-scale psychological warfare. They realized the glitch was a deliberate, permanent system failure. The first attack came from my brother Keaton Hayes, the lifelong source of their financial black holes and my personal torment. Keaton's stream of aggressive texts shortly after midnight was venomous. "What in God's name is your problem, Astrid?" He blasted, all pretense of sibling decorum gone. "Mom's business is seizing up, and if I don't close this funding round, my entire company is dead. You better fix this now, or I will use those co-signed documents against you so hard you'll lose your apartment. You're trying to sabotage me just because you're jealous of my success, aren't you?" Keaton's rage was pure, unadulterated entitlement. His success was a myth constantly fueled by my parents' money and ultimately my own. I knew the co-signed documents he referred to were the residual agreements from his first failed startup, the venture that had initially forced me to liquidate a portion of my savings to protect my parents from default, thereby normalizing my status as their financial savior. I didn't reply to his texts. I refused to engage in the circular argument, recognizing that his threat was an admission of his own desperation. His focus wasn't on family, but on the immediate threat to his comfort. Next, the emotional manipulation arrived courtesy of Uncle Franklin, Rhonda's younger brother, who always weaponized moral superiority. He sent me a series of sanctimonious, excessively long voice messages. "My dear, sweet niece, your mother and father are suffering immensely." His voice was falsely soothing, laced with a thin layer of judgment. "They confided in me about the gala incident. While their joke was in poor taste, your reaction, this financial punishment, is unchristian. The Bible instructs us to honor thy father and mother. They provided you with everything. You have a moral and spiritual debt. Don't let bitterness taint your soul. Just send the money, Astrid, and restore peace to the family." The sheer hypocrisy of using honor to demand money was staggering. I felt a fleeting doubt, the residual guilt of years of conditioning. Was I selfish? Was I wrong to prioritize my own financial security over their comfort? I sought the clarity of an objective professional, Elias Chen, my closest friend, and a level-headed certified public accountant. I played Uncle Franklin's messages for him. Elias listened intently. "What is this, Elias?" I asked, my voice weak. "They're attempting to shame me back into submission." Elias smiled thinly. "This, Astrid, is an extinction burst." He explained the psychological concept. When a learned behavior is no longer rewarded, the ATM dispensing cash, the subject escalates their efforts, resorting to frantic, aggressive, and often illogical behavior to force the return of the reward. "They are thrashing violently because the lever is broken," he clarified. "Uncle Franklin is just one of the hands desperately pressing the defunct button. They are terrified because they are facing the true consequences of their financial irresponsibility for the first time." Do not respond. Do not waver. If you give them even $1, you teach them that all they need to do is press harder next time. Elias's analogy was a perfect mental shield, transforming their frantic emotional pleas into predictable scientific phenomena. The failure of the extinction burst tactic meant they swiftly escalated from emotional pleading to professional sabotage. The ultimate threat arrived in my inbox late Thursday evening, a formal email from my father, Robert Hayes, bearing the chilling subject line, "Imminent legal action fraud." This formality was deeply unsettling. Robert never handled direct conflict, preferring to hide behind Rhonda. The content revealed the depth of their desperation and malice. Astrid Ka. The email began devoid of any familial warmth. Your mother Rhonda and I have formally engaged legal counsel. By unilaterally ceasing payments and failing to meet the financial obligations we co-signed together, you are violating verbal and contractual agreements. He then twisted my history. Furthermore, your actions constitute the abandonment of accumulated financial obligations, including back rent and compensation owed to us for providing you with a privileged upbringing which was predicated on the understanding that you would always financially support the family unit, especially considering the significant untaxed gift you received from Grandfather Walter's trust. This was the ultimate violation. They were weaponizing Grandfather Walter's generosity, the cornerstone of my independence, to frame me as a tax cheat and a fraudster. We must inform you. The email continued, the tone transitioning into open threat. That as a practicing financial risk analyst, your intentional divestment from shared accounts and credit lines, where you are the primary co-signer, constitutes grounds for severe misconduct. If the sum of $20,000 is not immediately wired to cover overdue fees by the end of the day tomorrow, we will file a formal report with FINRA, Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, and the relevant credit agencies. You know that a FINRA investigation, regardless of the outcome, will immediately revoke your license and end your professional career. This is your final opportunity. The calculation was flawless. They targeted my career, the one part of my life they couldn't control. A FINRA sanction was professional death. I immediately contacted attorney Victor Holt, a sharp-tongued litigator specializing in complex financial litigation. I didn't need a mediator. I needed a tactical nuclear deterrent. After paying his steep retainer an investment I willingly made for my sanity, I gave him clear instructions. Issue a highly aggressive cease and desist letter detailing my non-liability for their specific business debts, and more critically, conduct a forensic investigation into every document signed and every account shared with Rhonda and Robert Hayes. I needed to know the precise map of their corruption. Later that day, I met with Aunt Jocelyn Roberts' estranged sister, who had cut ties with the family years ago after experiencing similar financial predation. We met away from the city in a quiet park cafe. The felony email, Jocelyn stated the moment she saw me, her eyes heavy with recognition. They sent the exact same letter to Grandfather Walter when he refused to fund Robert's disastrous first business venture. Rhonda uses a template for emotional blackmail. Aunt Jocelyn confirmed my deepest fears. This wasn't a unique conflict. It was a decades-old established fraud scheme, and I was merely the newest victim on the roster. She spoke of how Grandfather Walter had to legally distance himself to protect his assets. This revelation galvanized me. My revenge wouldn't just be about reclaiming my money. It would be about exposing and shutting down a criminal operation that had terrorized my family for generations. My resolve solidified from defensive action to offensive strategy. Attorney Victor Holt did not waste time. His call a few days later contained the shocking truth that transformed the family drama into a major financial crime. His voice was entirely professional, making the severity of the situation feel brutally factual. Astrid, the investigation is complete. The $86,000 you were transferring over the last 2 years, it was not servicing the mortgage on the house as they had led you to believe. I felt a sudden cold vacuum in my chest. Then where was the money going? It was covering the interest payments on a colossal liability, a $500,000 business line of credit Blas. This line was opened under Hayes Elite Events 6 months ago, secured entirely by the equity of the family mansion. It was drawn down to the maximum $500,000 within 2 weeks of its activation. The crucial detail is that you are listed as the primary cosigner on the Blas. I struggled to breathe, trying to process the scale of the deceit. My parents hadn't just been using me as an allowance, they had used my perfect credit and professional background to illegally mortgage their home for $500,000. I vividly remembered signing those papers presented to me late at night as urgent minor paperwork to smooth out cash flow for Rhonda's event company. Hayes Elite Events had zero real assets to justify a block of this size, Attorney Holt explained. You were the only asset, the human collateral, and the entire transaction lines up perfectly with Keaton announcing his latest, most ambitious pivot and need for rapid seed funding. They funneled the $500,000 directly into his chronically failing venture to avoid admitting bankruptcy. The realization was nauseating. They hadn't just been financially abusing me, they had committed serious fraud, betting their entire life on my compliance, all to protect Keaton. The $86,000 I paid was merely the interest to keep this massive predatory loan from collapsing and exposing them. The BLOC is now severely delinquent due to the sudden cessation of your payments, Holt warned. The bank has initiated aggressive legal action and a writ of repossession is being prepared. They are moving to seize the house, the contents, and any assets tied to the BLOC, which includes Keaton's luxury car and Rhonda's event equipment. I was facing a devastating dual reality. My parents were guilty of massive fraud, and as the cosigner, I was technically on the hook for the entire $500,000 and the accompanying foreclosure. The anger was replaced by a deadly calm. They had chosen their path, and now the consequences were cascading. This is not just a breach, this is a clear pattern of criminal deception. I stated, my voice steady. They leveraged my name for $500,000 of bad debt. They are cornered. Holt agreed. We can file a civil suit immediately, but that will only drag you through years of painful litigation. Draft the countersuit and the documentation for the FINRA counter report. I instructed, a ruthless strategy forming in my mind. But do not file anything yet. I need to know their final move. They must be planning some desperate last-gasp attempt to raise capital and cover this hole. I want to watch it unedited. The countdown had begun, and I held the only timepiece. The natural human response to imminent financial ruin, a $500,000 debt, and a pending seizure of assets is retreat and damage control. The Hayes family, however, chose spectacle. They doubled down on the deceit. Days after my discovery of the BLOC default, an elaborate digital invitation arrived, this time not in my junk folder, but through an official company email addressed to esteemed colleagues and affiliates. It was the invitation to the Investor Gala and Product Reveal, Keaton's grand event hosted at the very mansion scheduled for repossession. The audacity was breathtaking. They were planning a massive public celebration of success to lure in final investment capital, a last desperate scramble for funds, all while standing on ground that was rapidly dissolving beneath their feet. The goal was simple: get enough cash to cover the immediate debt payment and stave off the writ of repossession for another few months. The public relations effort orchestrated by Rhonda was frantic. Her social media was overflowing with posts showcasing the lavish preparations, catering samples, floral arrangements, and staged photos of Keaton looking like a genius billionaire next to his company logo. Faith is knowing when one chapter closes, a new empire opens. Rhonda captioned one video, smiling widely while standing near the pool. So grateful to God and my wonderful, loyal family for making this next phase a reality. The hypocrisy fueled my determination. I decided to check the precise schedule for their downfall. I navigated the county court's public records again, entering the property details, and zeroed in on the order of repossession, writ of garnishment. The document was a cold, indisputable fact. The repossession agent, accompanied by sheriff's deputies and legal counsel, was scheduled to execute the writ at 2:00 p.m. on the day of the gala. I cross-referenced this with the invitation. The gala begins at 1:00 p.m. The timing was not just ironic, it was a perfect clockwork climax engineered by their own self-destruction. They would be standing on stage at the peak of their fabricated triumph, exactly 1 hour before the law arrived, to dismantle the entire illusion. I knew exactly what I had to do. There would be no warning, there would be no moral intervention. I called Elias Chen and attorney Victor Holt. The curtain goes up at 1 and the wrecking crew arrives at 2. I informed them, my voice flat professional. I want the writ executed on time, but I want to guarantee maximum consequences. We can make this much bigger than just foreclosure. Elias suggested, his CPA instincts immediately activating. An investor gala being thrown by a company in major block default, using the funds for unrelated personal and lifestyle ventures. That's a clear-cut case of fraudulent misrepresentation and corporate malfeasance. We can alert the IRS and the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) about potential investor fraud and tax evasion based on the assets listed in their paperwork. The plan coalesced rapidly. Attorney Holt would ensure the writ was enforced, securing the assets for the bank, while Elias would provide the financial context to the IRS. I wouldn't merely reclaim my freedom. I would ensure their public collapse was so devastating that the humiliation would dwarf the financial ruin. The ultimate checkmate was set. The walking ATM was about to deliver a final catastrophic withdrawal. The day of the gala, the sun shone relentlessly, mocking the impending disaster. I followed the event remotely from the quiet, detached sanctity of Elias Chen's office. On my laptop, I tracked the court documents. On my phone, I watched the live stream broadcast by Rhonda Hayes on her Hayes Elite Events Instagram account. The party was in full swing. Guests milled around the opulent pool, sipping cocktails, the mansion's extravagant interior, providing the backdrop for Rhonda's final grand performance. Rhonda herself, radiant in a shimmering gown, took the stage again. She toasted the crowd with manufactured sincerity. "To family," she cried, "and to the unwavering support and vision that built this empire." The camera panned over a visibly nervous Keaton Hayes, standing beside a freshly detailed luxury convertible, an asset I knew was already on the bank's list. "And now," Rhonda declared, the applause swelling, "I introduce our honored investors to the cutting-edge future of Keaton's company, a company built on belief." I glanced at the clock, 1:58 p.m. The air in Elias's office felt thick with anticipation. 2:00 p.m. On the live stream, the silence was shattered not by music, but by the unmistakable sound of a heavy vehicle turning onto the gravel driveway. The camera briefly shuddered. Rhonda paused mid-sentence, looking toward the front door. The doorbell rang again, a loud official sound that silenced the DJ. "Oh dear," Rhonda chuckled nervously, trying to maintain her composure. "Some people are always fashionably late." She walked to the door, her phone still streaming, providing a perfect high-definition view of her own downfall. She opened the door. Standing there were 2 uniformed sheriff's deputies, a stern-faced IRS agent in dark attire, and a man holding a clipboard, the repossession agent. "Rhonda Hayes," the sheriff's deputy asked, his voice firm and audible. "Ma'am, we are here to execute a writ of repossession and seizure order for this property and all attached assets." The deputy held up the official documents. "The property is now under the control of the lending institution and the Internal Revenue Service. You and all attendees have 15 minutes to vacate the premises before we secure the property." Rhonda's face crumpled, her perfectly constructed smile dissolving into raw terror. "This is impossible. There's a mistake. My daughter Astrid handles the finances. It's a technical error. The deputy remained unmoved. The order is valid, ma'am. Notification was delivered 30 days ago. Please comply. The tow truck, now fully visible on the live stream, backed toward Keaton's prized convertible. Keaton finally understood. "No, that's mine!" he shrieked, sprinting past the police into the driveway. "You can't take that." "Sir, that vehicle is collateral for a defaulted business line of credit," the repossession agent announced, already attaching the tow mechanism. Chaos exploded in the background. Guests were scrambling, rushing to the gates, realizing they had been lured into a fraudulent spectacle. Rhonda turned back to her phone, her face contorted, screaming into the lens for the hundreds of viewers and for me. "She did this, Astrid. You betrayed us. You cut the money. You ruined your own family." The image cut out abruptly, as someone, likely Rhonda herself, dropped the phone. The humiliation was absolute, public, and broadcast live to the very people they had tried to swindle. I closed the laptop, letting the blessed silence of the office settle around me. The knot of duty, guilt, and fear that had constricted my life for years finally dissolved. I had not saved them. I had saved myself. The ensuing weeks brought the true silence, the one that follows the death of a lie. The aftermath was swift and total. Rhonda faced serious legal jeopardy investigation by the IRS for investor fraud and a major lawsuit from the bank. Keaton's reputation was irrevocably shattered, and his latest venture was publicly exposed as a shell game. Robert Hayes was forced to file for personal bankruptcy, the sheer volume of his co-signed documents sinking him entirely. They lost the mansion and all their luxury assets. They were forced into a small rented unit, a stark, immediate reversal of the life they had demanded. The calls still came, pleading, angry, and finally pathetically desperate. Rhonda called, begging for a small loan for their first month's rent, insisting that family always comes first. I didn't engage. I simply listened to the voicemail and then pressed the delete button, treating her pleas as the irrelevant spam they were. 30 days after the gala, I wasn't celebrating a new house. I was celebrating professional freedom. I used my savings and the trust left by grandfather Walter to found my own independent financial risk consulting firm. I was sitting at my new modest desk when Elias arrived, carrying a bottle of sparkling cider. He raised his glass to me. "To the survivor," he said. "To the silent partner." I tapped my glass against his, my eyes shining with hard-earned peace. "I correct you," I stated firmly. "To the sovereign owner." I had learned the final, most painful lesson: you cannot purchase love, and you cannot pay off a debt of disrespect. The price of their entitlement was my financial enslavement. By cutting them off, I hadn't just saved $86,000. I had saved my entire future, my career, and my self-worth. Financial independence is the highest form of self-respect, and cutting the cord of dependency is the ultimate act of sovereignty. If you find yourself in the role of a walking ATM, remember that you are the one holding the power switch. Use it.